The Massacre. The sun was setting on Kepler-6, casting an orange glow over the peaceful human colony. Children laughed as they ran through the streets, their voices echoing between the metal buildings. Parents watched with smiles, feeling safe. The war between humanity and the Zytrax Empire had never reached this far. This colony was supposed to be hidden, a place where families could live without fear. But the Zytrax had found them. High above the planet, a Zytrax warship hovered in silence, cloaked from human radars. Inside, the alien warriors prepared for their attack. The Zytrax were a ruthless species, tall, armored beings with sharp claws and soulless black eyes. They believed humans were weak, soft creatures that screamed easily and died even faster. The Zytrax leader, Commander Vroth, stood in the center of the war room, watching the colony below. His lips curled in disgust. "They breed like insects," he muttered. "End them." The attack began without warning. Explosions shattered the peaceful evening. Fire erupted from the buildings as Zytrax dropships descended from the sky like metal vultures. The colony's defense systems tried to fight back, but the Zytrax were too strong. They marched through the streets with cold precision, killing every adult who dared to resist. Civilians ran, screaming, but the Zytrax warriors showed no mercy. Inside a small school building, a group of children huddled together, their tiny hands gripping each other. Their teacher, Miss Lorna, tried to keep them calm. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "Stay together." The door burst open. A Zytrax warrior stepped in, its tall body blocking the light. Its glowing red eyes scanned the room. Miss Lorna stood in front of the children, arms spread wide, shielding them. "Please," she begged. "They're just children." The Zytrax warrior tilted its head, considering her words. Then, without hesitation, it raised its weapon and fired. The teacher fell instantly, her body hitting the ground with a lifeless thud. The children screamed. The Zytrax laughed, a deep, guttural sound. They enjoyed fear. To them, this was entertainment. One by one, they executed the children, their small bodies collapsing like broken dolls. Some tried to run. Some cried for their parents. None escaped. By the time the Zytrax left, the school was silent. Commander Vroth stepped into the room, observing the carnage. His soldiers had done their job well. The floor was covered in blood and ash, tiny bodies lying still. One of his men spoke. "What now, Commander?" Vroth smirked. "Now we let the humans grieve. Let them feel true fear. They will know they are weak." With that, the Zytrax boarded their ships and left, vanishing into the dark sky. They believed they had won. They believed no one could stand against them. They had no idea what they had just awakened. Far away, among the ruins, a woman lay hidden under debris. Her body was covered in dust, her face smeared with blood. Her eyes burned with something the Zytrax did not understand. Not fear, not weakness, rage. And soon, the Zytrax would learn why humanity was feared across the stars. The Mother's Wrath. Smoke still rose from the ruins of Kepler-6. The air was thick with the scent of ash, blood, and burning metal. Silence had fallen over the once lively colony. Only the whispers of fire and the distant hum of broken machines remained. But beneath the wreckage, something stirred. A single hand pushed through the rubble, fingers digging into the dirt. A body followed, weak, bruised, but alive. Serena Drake gasped as she pulled herself free from the debris, her entire body screaming in pain. The deep gash ran across her forehead, and her ribs felt like they had been cracked open. But none of it mattered. She had seen it. The bodies, the school, the blood, and the small, lifeless form of her daughter, Maya, crumpled in the dust. For a moment, her mind refused to accept it. This wasn't real. This was a nightmare, one she would wake up from at any moment. Maya would come running, laughing, her little arms wrapping around her mother like she always did. But Maya wasn't running anymore. Serena's breath came in shallow gasps, her heartbeat a hammer inside her chest. She crawled forward on shaking arms, her hands reaching out toward her child's motionless body. Her fingers touched cold skin. Something inside her broke. A sound escaped her lips, something not quite human. A raw, guttural wail that echoed through the empty streets. It wasn't just grief. It was something deeper, something ancient. Rage. It clawed its way through her veins, coiling around her heart like a beast awakening from its cage. The Zytrax had made one fatal mistake. They had left her alive. The woman behind the name. Serena wasn't just a mother. Once, she had been something else. Before she settled on Kepler-6 to raise her daughter, she had been known by a different name. Shade. To humanity, she was a war hero. To the enemies of Earth, she was something else. A shadow, a ghost, a nightmare that walked among them. Serena Drake had been a part of Black Star, a classified human strike force designed for one thing: to hunt and exterminate hostile alien threats. She had killed before, many times, in places far darker than this, but she had buried that part of herself. She had sworn never to return to the monster she once was. Yet, as she stared at her daughter's body, something shifted. The woman who had promised to live in peace died in that moment, and the monster opened its eyes once more. The hunt begins. Serena moved like a machine. Silent, efficient, deadly. She stripped off the ruined civilian clothes, her hands moving with practiced precision. Underneath, she wore a thin combat suit, something she had kept hidden for years, a relic of her past. She retrieved a small military-grade data pad from a hidden compartment in her home's wreckage. Her fingers danced across the screen. Searching, tracking, hunting. The Zytrax fleet had jumped to light speed, but she knew how they worked. They would head toward a command outpost to report their victory. They were expecting no resistance. They had no idea she was coming for them. A message from hell. The Zytrax prided themselves on being fearless. They ruled through terror, breaking enemies before they even stepped onto the battlefield. They had never been hunted. Not like this. Deep inside the Zytrax command vessel, a soldier received an incoming transmission. It was heavily encrypted, coming from deep within human space. Commander Vroth frowned, irritated by the disturbance. He had just finished celebrating the destruction of the human colony. He had no patience for games. "Play it," he ordered. The screen flickered. The video feed was dark, showing only a single silhouette, a woman, her face hidden in shadow. But her voice sent a chill down his spine. "You killed my child." A pause. "Now I will erase your bloodline." Silence. The message ended. For the first time in his life, Commander Vroth felt fear. He didn't know who this human was, but something in her voice told him one thing. The real war had just begun. First blood. The Zytrax scout ship drifted silently through the void. Its crew of 5 had been sent to patrol the edge of human space, ensuring no retaliation would follow the massacre on Kepler-6. To them, this was routine. Another day of keeping the fragile humans in their place. Inside the cramped metallic corridors, the Zytrax warriors lounged with casual arrogance. Sergeant Cruel, the squad leader, leaned back in his chair, idly inspecting his razor-sharp claws. The others laughed as they recounted the events of Kepler-6, reveling in the terror they had caused. "Humans," Cruel said, shaking his head. "I still don't understand why High Command thinks they're a threat. They're nothing. Just soft prey." The others nodded, their laughter echoing through the ship. To them, the attack was a complete victory. The humans had no champions, no soldiers capable of standing against the Zytrax Empire. At least, that's what they believed. The trap. It began with a faint ripple across their communications console. The ship's systems detected a brief signal burst, a human distress call, faint and garbled. Corporal Zrax, the comms officer, frowned as he adjusted the receiver. "Sergeant, I'm picking up something strange. A human beacon, just a few kilometers out." Cruel sat up. "A distress signal. That's impossible. We wiped them out. He leaned over Zrax's console, studying the weak transmission. It sounded genuine. Panicked voices pleading for help. But the coordinates didn't match any known human settlements. "Play it," Cruel ordered. The recording was brief. A woman's voice, trembling with fear. "This is Kepler-6, requesting immediate assistance. They've killed everyone. Please, someone help us." Silence followed. The transmission ended abruptly, as if cut off. The Zytrax warriors exchanged glances, their amusement fading. "Kepler-6, Zrax muttered. "That can't be right. We destroyed." "It's a trap," Cruel interrupted, standing. "Some human survivor must have rigged a beacon to lure us in. They're desperate. Probably think they can ambush us." He motioned for the others to gear up. "Fine. Let's deal with them. It'll be quick." Boarding the wreck. Following the beacon's coordinates, the Zytrax scout ship came upon a drifting human freighter, a massive vessel with scorch marks across its hull. Its engines were dark, its lights flickering like a ghost ship. The Zytrax scanner confirmed only minimal life signs aboard. The perfect target. Cruel led his team onto the freighter, stepping through the airlock with weapons drawn. The corridors were eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from their heavy boots. The interior was a maze of broken panels and scattered debris, as if the ship had been abandoned mid-battle. "Split up," Cruel commanded. "Check every corner. Find the survivor and end them." The warriors moved swiftly, their claws clicking against their weapons. They expected a quick kill, maybe a terrified human cowering in a corner. They were not prepared for her. The first kill. Private Sran was the first to die. He had wandered into what seemed like the cargo bay, his rifle at the ready. The room was dark, shadows stretching across crates and machinery. He swept his weapon from side to side, his movements steady. Then, a soft sound behind him, a whisper of motion. Zran spun around, but he saw nothing, just shadows. "Who's there?" he growled, his voice echoing in the empty bay. Silence. Then, without warning, something sharp cut through the air. Zran's eyes widened as he felt a blade pierce his armor, sliding effortlessly between the plates. He gasped, clutching at the wound, but his attacker was already gone. By the time the others found his body, it was too late. The hunter revealed. One by one, the Zytrax fell. Serena moved like a phantom, striking quickly and retreating into the shadows before the others could react. The narrow corridors of the freighter became her hunting ground, every corner a potential trap. Corporal Zrax managed to fire off a few shots, his plasma bolts lighting up the dark hallway. For a moment, he caught a glimpse of her, a figure clad in black, her face hidden beneath a helmet. Human, but not like any human he had faced before. "Who? What is she?" Zrax gasped as he clutched his side, blood seeping between his fingers. Before he could speak again, she finished him, her movements swift and precise. Cruel was the last one standing. He found himself alone in the control room, the others silent on his comm. His claws trembled as he stared at the sealed door, the faint sound of approaching footsteps on the other side. For the first time in his career, fear gripped him. This wasn't an ambush. This wasn't a desperate human survivor. This was something else. A predator. And she was coming for him. The door slid open. Cruel raised his weapon, firing wildly. The plasma bolts lit up the room, revealing her standing in the doorway, calm and steady. She moved forward, each step deliberate, her blade glinting in the dim light. As Krull's weapon overheated, he dropped it, scrambling back. What are you?" he demanded, his voice shaking. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, raising her weapon. Her voice, cold and steady, echoed through the room. "You called us weak." Her blade plunged forward, and Krull's screams were the last sound on the ship before silence fell once again. The warning. When the Zytrax High Command finally received a transmission from the missing scout ship, It was not from their warriors. It was her, Serena Drake. Her face remained hidden, her voice calm and steady. "Run. Hide. It won't save you." The message ended abruptly, leaving only static. And for the first time, the Zytrax realized the truth. They had awoken something they could not control. Fear spreads. The Zytrax outpost was a towering spire of metal and glass, glowing faintly in the cold light of a distant sun. Positioned at the edge of their empire's claimed territory, the outpost served as a staging ground, a place where fresh troops gathered, supplies were distributed, and orders from high command were relayed. Until now, it had always been a symbol of control, a reminder that the Zytrax ruled these star systems without question. That was about to change. The first sign that something was wrong came with the silence. At exactly 300 standard hours, communication from Squadron Theta, assigned to patrol the adjacent sector, went dead. At first, the outpost's officers assumed a technical glitch, a common occurrence when dealing with human-dominated space. Their technology had a knack for interfering with Zytrax frequencies. But then Squadron VIX stopped responding, and Unit 13 Alpha, stationed aboard a cargo freighter. In less than an hour, 3 separate units vanished. No distress calls, no final reports. Just silence. Commander Vroshak stood in the outpost's command chamber, his clawed hands tightening around the edge of a glowing data console. His gaze bore into the screen, reading the reports as they came in. Each one more vague, more ominous than the last. A veteran of countless campaigns, Vroshak was known for his unshakable confidence, his cold precision in battle. But now his voice carried a tension his officers had never heard before. "Play back the last known transmission from Theta." A junior officer complied, tapping a sequence of glowing panels. The screen flickered, showing the final moments of Theta's command ship. At first, the camera feed was calm, displaying the bridge crew at their posts, scanning for signs of human resistance. The feed distorted slightly, an interference pattern, just for a moment. Then the sound started, screaming. It wasn't a battle cry, nor the panic shouts of troops under attack. It was something more primal. A chilling, agonized wail that seemed to echo from every direction. The camera view jerked violently as the crew scrambled, weapons drawn. But no enemy appeared. The lights flickered. The screams grew louder, and then the screen went dark. Vroshak slammed his claws against the console. What is this? A human trick? Some new weapon? The junior officer hesitated, his scales paling. "Commander, we've recovered." Another transmission. "Show it," Vroshak snapped. This time, the screen displayed a single figure, a human woman. Her face was obscured by shadow, but the faint glow of the outpost screens highlighted the cold glint in her eyes. Her voice was calm, measured, but it carried an edge of menace that made the Zytrax crew shift uncomfortably. "You thought you were safe out here," she said, her tone almost conversational. "You thought you could kill our children and walk away. You thought you could hide in your metal spires and your warships." She leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. "You were wrong." The screen went blank again, leaving only static. Terror takes root. By dawn, rumors had spread to every level of the outpost. Soldiers whispered to one another in the dim barracks, their voices hushed but urgent. The older veterans, those who had fought in dozens of battles, tried to calm the younger recruits. "Humans are weak," they said. "They're panicking. They're trying to scare us. It won't work." But their words rang hollow. Even the veterans could feel it. Something was different. The outpost's perimeter patrols began reporting strange sightings. Shadows moving in places they shouldn't. Heat signatures that disappeared when approached. One patrol found a series of bloody handprints streaked across a bulkhead, leading to a dark maintenance shaft. The squad sent to investigate never came back. Tensions rose. Fights broke out between soldiers. A seasoned officer, known for his discipline, was found trembling in a storage bay, mumbling incoherently about eyes in the dark, and a voice calling my name. He was placed in confinement, but word of his breakdown spread quickly. If someone like him could crack, who could be next? A name unspoken. As the days passed, the whispers turned into a name. Shade. No one knew exactly where it started, but the name spread like wildfire. It was spoken in hushed tones, as if saying it too laudably might summon the monster herself. Shade. The human hunter who had killed entire squads without leaving a trace. The phantom who could strike from anywhere. The shadow that was always watching. The stories grew more outlandish. Some claimed she had weapons that could pierce Zytrak's armor effortlessly. Others said she didn't need weapons at all, that she could kill with her bare hands, faster than the eye could follow. A few even whispered that she wasn't human at all, but a creature born from the darkness of space, a vengeful spirit that couldn't be stopped. Commanders tried to squash the rumors, but it was too late. The fear had taken hold. Breaking point. One night, the outpost's central communication hub picked up another transmission. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a recording. The screams again. They blasted through every corridor, every chamber. They seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Soldiers covered their ears, but the sound was inside their helmets, their comms, their very minds. Lights flickered. Machinery malfunctioned. Some swore they saw her silhouette in the darkness, just for a moment, before she vanished again. The outpost leaders gathered in a frantic meeting, their usually cold, calculating voices raised in desperation. This cannot continue. One officer shouted, "If this shade exists, we must find her. We must. She's not real." Another interrupted, "It's a human trick, a psychological attack." A loud crash interrupted the argument. The lights went out completely. When they came back on, a single line of text had appeared on every screen in the outpost. "You called us weak." It blinked twice, then vanished. The Boogeyman rises. Deep in the heart of the Zytrak's high command, the corridors were uncharacteristically quiet. Once a hub of activity, warriors training, commanders barking orders, engineers fine-tuning the massive warships. It now felt abandoned, like a city under siege. The few remaining officers moved swiftly and spoke in hushed tones. Their usual arrogance was gone. Fear clung to the air like a fog. It had been weeks since they first heard her name. Shade. What began as a whispered rumor had grown into a full-blown terror. She wasn't just a human. She wasn't just a soldier. To the Zytraks, she had become something worse. A predator. A phantom. A monster who thrived on the fear she created. The fleet commanders gathered in the command hall, a towering chamber filled with holographic displays of star systems and troop movements. Normally, this room buzzed with confidence and strategy. Now, it was dominated by silence and shifting, uneasy glances. General Xavath, a veteran leader whose voice once commanded entire armadas, stood at the head of the table. His claws tapped against the metal surface, the rhythmic sound the only noise in the room. His sharp, alien eyes darted from one officer to the next. "Report," he growled, his voice low and gravelly. "What have you found?" An officer stepped forward, clutching a data pad in trembling hands. "General, we found another outpost. Sector 9. It was..." He paused, swallowing hard. It was completely empty. No survivors. No bodies. Just... He hesitated, as if the words were hard to say. Just messages scrawled on the walls. Xavath's brow ridges furrowed. Messages. The officer nodded. In human script. Simple words. "Run. Hide. She's here." The room grew colder. Xavath straightened, his claws digging into the table. "And our surveillance footage. We recovered fragments," the officer said. They show a shadow moving through the corridors. It's impossible to see her clearly. She's always just out of frame. But the screams, sir, the screams." His voice trailed off. Xavath slammed his claws on the table. "Enough. I don't need ghost stories. I need facts. Tell me, what is she? How can we stop her?" The officer shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know, sir. Every time she strikes, it's as if she vanishes. No heat signatures, no warp traces, just silence, and then—" He didn't finish. Another commander spoke up, his tone urgent. "Sir, we should consider retreating from the outer colonies. Pull our forces back to the core systems. We can regroup, fortify, and retreat." Sovath snarled, his voice booming through the chamber. "You suggest we run from a single human? She's not just a human," another officer blurted out. The room turned to him. His eyes darted nervously. "You've all heard the reports. She doesn't fight like them. She doesn't move like them. She's more like a nightmare." Sovath's claws scraped against the table as he leaned forward. "Nightmares don't kill outposts. They don't dismantle fleets. They don't turn soldiers into cowards." His eyes narrowed. "What you're describing is fear. And fear is what weaklings succumb to. Fear unleashed." But Sovath's words didn't stop the whispers. Outside the command hall, in the lower levels, the Zytrax warriors muttered among themselves. Every patrol returned with new rumors. Some claimed they heard her voice in the shadows, speaking in the human tongue. Others swore they saw her silhouette on their ship's hull before their systems went dark. They began to see her everywhere, even where she wasn't. One young warrior, barely out of training, sat in the mess hall with his squad. His hands shook as he tried to eat, his claws scraping against the metal tray. "Do you think she's watching us now?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Shut up," his squad leader snapped. "She's not here. We're in the core fleet. We're safe." "But Theta thought they were safe," the young warrior whispered. "So did the outposts. So did the forward battalions. And now they're all—" "Enough," the squad leader barked. But even he couldn't hide the uncertainty in his voice. That night, when the lights dimmed and the ship entered its quiet cycle, the young warrior lay awake, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. He swore he heard soft footsteps outside his quarters. He tried to convince himself it was nothing, just the hum of the ship's engines. But the fear wouldn't let him rest. The last transmission. Back in the command hall, another report came in. A remote relay station had picked up a strange transmission from one of the forward fleets. The audio feed crackled and hissed as the Zytrax technicians worked to clean it up. At first, it was just static. Then, faintly, a voice emerged. A woman's voice. Calm. Measured. Hers. "You thought I wouldn't find you. You thought you could run." There was a pause, followed by a low, cold chuckle. "Run. Hide. It won't matter. I'll come for you, just like I came for the others." The transmission ended abruptly. The chamber fell into silence once more. Sovath stood motionless, his claws gripping the edge of the console. For the first time, he felt the full weight of the reports. The whispers, the fear. He had dismissed it all as human tricks. But now, as he stared at the darkened screen, he realized the truth. She wasn't hunting them for survival. She was hunting them for what they had done. And she wouldn't stop until they paid for every drop of human blood they had spilled. The final lesson. General Sovath stood in the center of the command chamber, the faint hum of the starship's core the only sound. The once proud Zytrax fleet had dwindled, their warships now scattered or destroyed. Reports of Shade's attacks were no longer rumors. They were cold, hard truths etched into the fabric of the Empire's communication networks. No outpost was safe. No soldier could escape, even in the heavily fortified command carrier. The Zytrax warriors moved quietly, their heavy footsteps hushed. They glanced over their shoulders as they walked the hallways. The idea that one human, just one, could unravel an entire empire was too absurd to believe. But belief no longer mattered. They had seen it. They had lived it. She was out there, and she was coming. Sovath tapped a claw against his command console. The display flickered, showing the remnants of the fleet's forces. Barely a handful of ships remained in formation. Even their core systems were falling into disarray. Entire colonies had gone silent, their infrastructure left intact, but their garrisons missing. No trace of battle, no signs of survivors, just emptiness. "Bring me all the reports," Soveth ordered, his voice firm despite the weight pressing down on him. "I need to know exactly what we're dealing with." An officer approached, holding a data tablet. He hesitated, his shoulders stiff with tension. "General, there's something you need to hear." Soveth frowned, motioning for him to continue. "The last message from our outpost on Dranax IV, before it went dark," the officer said. It was brief, but unsettling. The general leaned forward, his claws gripping the edge of the console. "Play it." The officer tapped a few keys. The room filled with static at first. Then a faint, distant voice broke through. It was a Zytrax soldier, his tone panicked and ragged. "She's here. She's inside the compound. I don't know how she got through the defenses. We're not safe. No one's safe." A sharp, metallic crash followed, then silence. A single line of human speech crackled through the static before the feed cut out completely. "You called us weak. Now you'll learn." Soveth's jaw clenched. He turned to his officers, the tension in the room thick enough to choke on. "Enough of this nonsense. She's just a human. We're the Zytrax Empire. If she comes for us, we'll destroy her. Alert all units to prepare for." Before he could finish, the lights flickered. The hum of the ship's core faltered. A chill ran through the room as every screen went black, one by one.